Have you ever wondered why, for about 2 years, the most famous hot sauce bottle in the world, that iconic clear plastic bottle with the green cap and the rooster on the front, completely vanished from the face of the earth? Was it really climate change? Was it a drought? Or was it actually one of the most expensive and petty breakups in business history? This is Critical Path, where we explore stories and innovations about our global supply chain that connect our world to your everyday life. Today we are diving into a story that has everything: betrayal, courtroom drama, millions of dollars in damages, and a revenge plot that would make a soap opera writer jealous. We are talking about the Sriracha Apocalypse. If you are a fan of spicy food, specifically Vietnamese pho, or just putting a kick on your morning eggs, the years 2023 and 2024 were dark times. You probably remember walking into your favorite restaurant, sitting down, and reaching for that familiar rooster sauce, only to find nothing. Or maybe you found a generic chili garlic sauce that looked sad and tasted wrong. Or, heaven forbid, you found a bottle of vinegar-based Tabasco sitting there, which, let's be honest, completely ruins the flavor profile of a good bowl of soup. It was a panic. It was a legitimate grey market event. On eBay, single 28-ounce bottles of Huy Fong Sriracha were selling for anywhere between $80 and $150. Think about that. People were trading hot sauce like it was vintage scotch or a rare cryptocurrency. Restaurants were actually reporting that customers were stealing the bottles right off the tables. It got so bad that owners had to lock the sauce in safes, dispensing it only to trusted regulars in little plastic cups, like it was contraband. Now, the official story from Haiphong Foods, the company that makes the rooster sauce, was that weather conditions and climate change had caused a severe shortage of chili peppers. And sure, there was a drought in Mexico. But saying the shortage was caused by the weather is a convenient half-truth. As one analyst put it, that is like a man burning down his own house and then blaming the fire department for having a slow response time. The reality? The Sriracha Apocalypse was a catastrophic breakdown in human relationships. It was a $23 million argument over peppers that destroyed a 28-year partnership. It is a case study in what happens when you forget that supply chains aren't just about trucks and warehouses, they are about people. To understand how we lost the sauce, we have to go back to the golden era. We have to look at the marriage before the divorce. The story revolves around two men. On one side, you have David Tran, the founder of Huy Fong Foods. He is a legend. He was a Vietnamese refugee who arrived in Los Angeles on a freighter named the Huy Fong, which is where the company got its name. He started making sauce in a bucket with a simple philosophy: make a rich man's sauce at a poor man's price. He famously never spent a dime on advertising because the product was just that good. On the other side, you have Craig Underwood, a multi-generational farmer in Ventura County, California. For nearly 3 decades, from 1988 to 2016, these two men had what we call a handshake ecosystem. It operated on a level of trust that simply does not exist in modern corporate America. There were no massive legal binders. The agreement was largely verbal. David Tran would tell Craig Underwood, "I need more peppers next year," and Underwood would just go out and lease more land. And we aren't talking about a small garden here. By 2015, Underwood Ranches had dedicated between 1,700 and 2,000 acres of prime California farmland exclusively to growing jalapenos for Huy Fong. This partnership was the secret sauce, literally. You see, Sriracha is special because it is made from fresh red jalapenos. It is not made from dried powder, and it is not made from a boiled mash like some other hot sauces. To get that crisp, bright, garlic-forward flavor, the peppers have to be ground within hours of being picked. Underwood's farm was only a 40-minute truck ride away from Huy Fong's massive factory in Irwindale, California. They had a field-to-grind time that was incredibly fast. It was a vertically integrated virtual enterprise. Huy Fong didn't own the farm, but they might as well have. And Underwood didn't own the factory, but his entire livelihood depended on it. They were, for lack of a better term, supply chain soulmates. But as with many long marriages, complacency set in. And in 2016, things turned sour. And the catalyst for this disaster was surprisingly petty when you consider we are talking about a multi-million-dollar operation. It started when David Tran began to suspect that his partner, Underwood, was overcharging him for the farming operations. Specifically, Tran believed that Underwood had failed to return roughly $1.4 million in overpayments from the previous growing season. Now, in a strategic partnership, you usually sit down, maybe pour a drink, and work this out. But that is not what happened. David Tran decided to escalate. Rather than negotiating, Haifeng just stopped making payments to Underwood. It was a power move. And then, in 2017, Haifeng sued Underwood Ranches for the $1.4 million in breach of contract. Imagine that. You have a partner who has dedicated 2,000 acres of land to you, a partner who creates the core ingredient of your only product, and you sue them over a billing dispute. Craig Underwood was left holding the bag. He had thousands of acres prepared for a crop that Haifeng was refusing to pay for. So, he did what any cornered farmer would do. He countersued. Underwood's argument was that Haifeng had committed fraud and broken an implied contract. He argued that because their relationship had lasted 28 years, he had a reasonable expectation that the business would continue, and he had made massive capital investments in equipment and land leases, based entirely on that trust. The case went to a jury in Ventura County in 2019, and the verdict was an absolute bloodbath for the sauce maker. The jury found that Haifeng had breached the contract and acted fraudulently. And here is where the math gets painful. David Tran tried to save $1.4 million. The jury ordered him to pay Underwood $23.3 million. That is $13.3 million in compensatory damages and $10 million in punitive damages. So let's recap the supply chain math. Tran wanted to save just over $1 million. Instead, he lost $23 million in cash. But the money wasn't even the biggest loss. The real cost was that he lost 100% of his supply chain. He fired the only person who knew how to grow his peppers. This leads us to the aftermath, and why you can't just go out and buy peppers on the open market. Haifeng made a classic procurement error. They assumed peppers were a commodity. They thought, if Underwood won't grow them, I'll just buy them from Mexico. They confused a specialized input for a generic one. This brings us to a concept usually reserved for fancy wine snobs: terroir. Terroir is the idea that the soil, the climate, and the elevation all affect the taste of what you grow. It turns out, hot sauce has terroir too. Underwood was growing a specific hybrid red jalapeno that was perfectly adapted to the cool coastal air and rich soil of Ventura County. These peppers had thick walls, meaning more flesh, and high sugar content, which is crucial for the fermentation process. When Haifeng switched to sourcing from various farms in Mexico, they ran into a wall of biological reality. The soil was different, the climate was hotter, the resulting peppers were often too hot, or not hot enough. They were lower in sugar, which messed with the fermentation. They had thinner walls, which affected the viscosity, or the thickness, of the sauce. Consumers noticed immediately. If you bought a bottle after 2019, you might have noticed the sauce looked muddy in color and had a harsher, less garlicky taste. That wasn't your imagination. That was the loss of the Ventura County terroir. But it wasn't just about taste, it was about logistics. Remember that field to grind time? The Underwood model relied on a 40-minute drive, ensuring fresh, crisp peppers arrived at the factory. The Mexico model involved a drive of over 1,000 miles. You simply cannot ship fresh, ripe red jalapenos that far efficiently. They rot. To prevent them from rotting in the truck, you have to pick them earlier, when they are greener, or process them on site, which Haifeng wasn't set up to do. This logistical nightmare came to a head in May of 2024, causing yet another shortage. A letter from Haifeng leaked online, stating they were halting production again until September. The reason? The peppers they received were too green. You see, a jalapeno starts green and turns red as it ripens. You need fully red peppers for Sriracha, but because Haifeng was scrambling for supply in a spot market, and because of the severe drought in Mexico stunting the ripening process, growers were picking too early to meet quotas. Haifeng had to reject the shipments. They had zero inventory, they had a factory, they had the bottles, they had the recipe, but they had no red peppers. Now, if the story ended there, it would just be a sad tale of corporate mismanagement. But the story gets Shakespearean. It turns into a revenge thriller. Craig Underwood, sitting on his $23 million settlement and 3,000 acres of farming know-how, decided he wasn't going to retire. He decided to compete. He launched Underwood Ranches Sriracha, and he wasn't subtle about it. Haifeng's logo is a rooster. Underwood's logo? A dragon. A subtle dig, perhaps implying the dragon eats the rooster. His marketing slogan is simple: the pepper makes the sauce. And here is the kicker. Blind taste tests conducted by food critics, including the Los Angeles Times, yielded a shocking result. Underwood's dragon sauce tasted more like the original Sriracha than Haifeng's current sauce did. Why? Because the pepper is the primary ingredient. Underwood still had the original ingredient, that specific jalapeno grown in that specific soil. Huifeng only had the recipe. It turns out, in the world of hot sauce, the hardware, the peppers, matters a lot more than the software, the recipe. Meanwhile, Huifeng's absence from the shelf created a massive vacuum, and in retail, nature abhors a vacuum. For 30 years, Huifeng had a monopoly. They were the Kleenex of Sriracha. But when the Rooster bottle disappeared, people had to buy something else. Tabasco launched a Sriracha version. Texas Pete launched a version called Cha. Trader Joe's, Roland, Lee Kum-Kee, everyone jumped in. The tragedy for Huifeng is the loss of what we call vendor stickiness. When loyal customers couldn't find the Rooster, they bought the Tabasco version and realized, hey, this is actually pretty good. Huifeng effectively forced their loyal customer base to date other people, and many of those customers are never coming back. So looking at this through the lens of the critical path, where did it all go wrong? We can break this down into 3 massive failures. Failure number 1. Single source dependency. Huifeng violated the cardinal rule of risk management, which is that you never have a single point of failure. They were comfortable. The relationship was easy. But you simply cannot fire your only supplier until you have a backup running at 50% capacity. They should have diversified gradually over 10 years, not tried to switch everything in 10 days. Failure number 2. The ZACE, litigation versus negotiation, calculation. David Tran treated a strategic partnership like it was a transactional vendor relationship. If you are buying paper clips and the price is wrong, sure, find a new vendor. That is transactional. But when you are buying the core ingredient of your only product from the only guy who knows how to grow it, that is strategic. You do not sue your strategic partner over a billing dispute. You make it work. Failure number 3. The underestimation of agriculture. This is a classic tech mindset. Error applied to a Kara, biological world. In tech, if a microchip supplier fails, you find another supplier with the same specs. It's digital. It's precise. But in agriculture, biology is messy. You cannot simply copy and paste a farm from California to Chihuahua, Mexico. The soil biology, the water table, and the microclimate create the product. Huifeng underestimated the biological complexity of their own supply chain. The Sriracha Apocalypse is a cautionary tale for every business leader, and really, for anyone involved in a partnership. It is a story about how ego is the most expensive line item on a profit and loss sheet. David Tran built a magnificent empire based on product quality. He is a genius in his own right, but he nearly destroyed that empire by forgetting that his quality was derived from a partnership. He thought he could stand alone, but he was standing on the shoulders of a farmer. As of 2026, Huifeng is back on the shelves. You can buy it at the grocery store again, but the dominance is gone. The bottle looks the same, but the magic, that specific sun-ripened Ventura County crunch, is gone. The rooster crowed too loud, and the dragon ate his lunch. The educational takeaway here is simple. Your supply chain is not just a spreadsheet, it is a relationship. If you try to squeeze the last penny out of your partner, you might find yourself holding a bottle of vinegar and red food coloring, wondering where the flavor went. We want to hear from you on this one. It is time for a taste test. We want to know. Have you tried the dragon sauce from Underwood Ranches? Can you taste the spite? Is it delicious? Or did you switch to Tabasco or Texas Pete during the Great Drought? Let us know in the comments below what replaced the rooster in your fridge. Thanks for listening and watching. Please like and subscribe, and make sure to check out our other videos about the global supply chain.